Pieces of debris, the sidewalk leading up to a front door, and this empty lot without a foundation are all that's left of this home on Magnolia Avenue. Games start in Rio in less than a month. The world's best athletes will compete in 41 different events, including archery. Experts say it's recently gotten much more popular, especially because of movies like The Hunger Games. We are on 98th Place Boulevard in Lamar County, and you can see just pieces of this retaining wall for the apartment complex are falling off. If you take a look at the wall, the crack has gotten big enough and it's pulled away enough from the wall that I could fit my arm in here if I wanted to. If it was a mistake, it's a pretty expensive mistake for taxpayers.
You can always say that.
6 people were sent to the hospital after a rollover accident in Jones County this morning. The car hit a guardrail on I-59, flipped several times. Only 6 of the snake species in Mississippi are actually venomous, and Buckley says there are key characteristics like coloring that you can look for to be sure that you're staying safe. U.S. officials are warning there could be another military strike in Syria almost 24 hours after President Trump launched dozens of Tomahawk missiles targeting an airbase where intelligence teams say Syrian fighters initiated a chemical attack that killed at least 100 civilians. One person is in critical condition after a shooting with a Hattiesburg police officer. According to the department, police were pursuing a person possibly wanted for burglary and credit card fraud. That chase ended here on Att Avenue, which runs right along a train track. That's when witnesses say the suspect got out of his car, tried to cross through a moving train, and when he couldn't, he turned around and started shooting at the police officer. Residents along Lucas Werner Road in Jeff Davis County say they had no warning before that tornado touchdown, and the National Weather Service in Jackson says they're right. The office didn't issue one, and it's explaining why as residents start picking up the pieces.
This shed was here.
This is what's left of Yvonne Wilson's home and yard after a typical summer storm turned into something more.
And all of a sudden I heard this roar like a train. Then the house was shaking.
That's when Wilson headed for her bathroom.
So I started down the hall, and the wind from that crash, when the roof was coming off, I could feel it in my back as if it was going down the hall. You don't have time to think, you know, in your mind what's going on, and all of a sudden everything around you is crashing, and you look up and you can see the sky. It's just completely devastating.
She says she wasn't expecting the storm to create a tornado, and neither was the National Weather Service.
We didn't have any tornado warnings in effect. We had a special weather statement saying there was potential for strong storms in that area. You know, you think about tornadoes in the summer months, especially July, you know, they are very rare to get those outside of a tropical cyclone.
It's a little scary because, you know, we listen to the news all the time, but I had no idea.
Entremont says neither the atmosphere nor the radar rotation made them think a tornado would happen.
It's just one of those really rare situations that a few perfect things came together.
While her life is still strewn across her yard, Wilson says she's thankful to be alive.
My tears are actually tears of joy, because I know it could have been the other way around.
We started doing stories in November about discolored water in Hattiesburg, and tonight we're on your side finding out what's causing the problem. We had the water independently tested by experts to answer your question: is it safe to drink? It doesn't matter who you are or where you live.
If there's one thing that is extremely important to everyone, it's water, and clean, healthy water.
Especially when you're running a restaurant like T-Bone's Records and Cafe owner Harry Crumpler. While he understands things like fire hydrant testing can occasionally cause discolored water,
we started noticing it happening more and more and more.
Sitting between North 22nd and 21st Avenues, T-Bone shares the same Hattiesburg neighborhood with residents who have complained about brown water for months. That water is taking a toll on its industrial filtration system that ensures coffee, teas, and soda are all made with clean water.
When you start looking at how much we're having to maintain our filtration system, normally that would be a twice a year thing for us. Right now, it's a 6 to 8 times a year thing for us.
Having clear water is essential for the cafe, but the extra work to keep it clean comes at an extra cost.
So basically, we're talking about an extra $1,200, maybe $1,500 a year to maintain the quality of our water.
Crumpler says he's been paying for it for almost 2 years, which makes him think about residents in the surrounding neighborhoods.
The water is brown in our house, and this is just an example of all the whites, all my shirts, all my sheets, all the white towels have been ruined.
Who don't have that same kind of filtration system.
It's not just a question of aesthetics, as we were talking about. It's a question of what's making it that color.
That's what we wanted to find out. What's in the water, and is it safe to drink? We sent a sample from a Park Haven neighborhood home to be tested by experts at drinking water specialists. The lab tests for more than 100 different things, from metals to chemicals, to compare how much is in the water to levels set by the EPA. Hattiesburg's water had small amounts of things like copper, iron, and lead, but nothing over the limits.
It's unsightly. It's not something that, again, that we want to be known for, but it's one of those things that with a 135-year-old city that you have to contend with.
Even if it's not a health concern,
What the sediment and things in the water can do is ruin equipment, stain things, cause plumbing issues.
the city agrees. Hattiesburg's engineer says it's iron deposits in the water causing the discoloration, and the city's already working on ways to reduce that. Most of the complaints about water color are coming from old neighborhoods with pipes so small they can fit in a sandwich-sized Ziploc bag.
Is that water line?
That's one of our water lines, yes, ma'am.
Oh my God.
And I mean, you're talking infrastructure 50 to 100 years old.
Upping the size means less pressure and scraping on the sides of the lines as the water flows through, hopefully leading to less iron and fewer bits of pipe mixed in. The city's also working to find and fix dead-end lines and broken valves to keep water flowing freely.
We have lines that are not connected. Some of these things happened back in the 50s. So it's not to point blame or to say that anybody is doing anything wrong, but we just need to find out how we can solve this.
Hattiesburg's also upgrading one of its water plants with new filters to remove any iron coming from the groundwater. So when can residents and restaurants expect to see relief?
We're moving just as fast as we can.
We wouldn't want to tear up the entire city at one time, was the statement that was made. We've got to decide which neighborhoods are going to be first. That's a question.
If it was one solution, we'd be out there right now digging up streets to do it, but it's not one solution.
So as city projects get underway, Crumpler says he'll keep paying to keep his water clear.
I never enjoy an additional expense. I'm happy to pay this one. I would like to see it be less of a necessity in the future.
As for how long those projects will take and what they'll cost, the city's engineer says ideally he'd like to spend $500,000 to $1 million on water line repair and replacement every year. At that rate, he estimates it'll take 5 to 7 years to fix different areas throughout the city. Carrie? Jefferson Medical says an unauthorized individual got access to private patient information. Today, that unauthorized individual is saying he did access it, but not intentionally and not to cause harm. Chris Vickery does a lot more than Google when he searches the internet.
I find things that are publicly available on the internet that should probably not be publicly available. Things like databases that have no password and are configured for public access.
That's exactly how Vickery says he found personal information on patients of Jefferson Medical Associates.
I was just going through randomly looking at the publicly available, configured for public access databases on those ports, and this one showed up.
Jefferson Medical says that's private information Vickery shouldn't have had access to.
This information is private information, it's federally protected information, it's information that was on our server. This individual accessed it without our permission. He did it in secret.
Vickery agrees he shouldn't have had access, and that's why he says he alerted the practice to the security flaw.
When I realized there were social security numbers and names and phone numbers and prescription information, it dawned on me that, hey, this probably should not be public if it is real data. So then I started the process of trying to figure out whose it was.
There has never been a time when patient information in Jefferson Medical's possession has been just out there on the internet for anyone to get to.
But Vickery says it was out there if you knew where to look, and that's why he says it's not a hack.
It was as available as a website is. There was nothing to hack. There simply was no password, no username, no security features of any sort being used.
He says he didn't steal, sell, or use that information at all, but Jefferson Medical says it's upping security to make sure no one else can in the future. Moving forward, Jefferson Medical says it's reported the breach to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. That's a requirement under HIPAA. Gilchrist says an internal and a law enforcement investigation is ongoing. She couldn't say if Vickery could face criminal charges, but he says he doesn't think there's a criminal penalty since it wasn't actually a hack. Fraud, kickbacks, and money laundering, all recent charges against Mississippi public officials. While those crimes cost them their jobs, their pension checks funded by your tax dollars are still being sent to prison.
I apologize.
The head of Mississippi's prison system now heading to prison himself. Chris Epps pleaded guilty to federal charges for money laundering conspiracy, forcing him to forfeit his 2 Mercedes-Benz vehicles and his 2 homes. But Mississippi taxpayers are still funding his retirement.
If you are embezzling, you're taking kickbacks, you're betraying the public trust, then why should you be entitled to tax dollars for your retirement for the rest of your life?
The Public Employees Retirement System of Mississippi, or PERS, allows state workers to collect their pensions after 25 years, even if they're found guilty of public corruption. We're talking some big-time officials that are making quite a bit of money in the state of Mississippi, right?
Right. We've got right now over 6 individuals who've pled guilty during my time in office who are all making over $100,000 a year. That means their retirement initially, their base retirement will be $50,000+.
105 public officials in all, according to Pickering, who pleaded or have been found guilty and are still collecting state retirement. People like
Shelley Palmertree, former circuit clerk of Warren County, is sitting in state prison right now, and she embezzled almost, if not over, $6 million from the taxpayers of Warren County, and she's drawing her retirement while she's in prison.
And former Camp Shelby cafeteria manager Jerry Howard, accused of stealing $100,000 worth of food from the Youth Challenge Academy and sentenced to 8 years in prison.
There's an issue of justice here.
But taxpayers in other states aren't paying pensions for prisoners. 25 states, including Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, have laws that require felons to forfeit their retirement. But Mississippi doesn't. Last year, I know there was a House bill that was looking at possible legislation for removing pensions for felons.
House Bill 31 last year would have precluded anybody who pled guilty or was found guilty of public corruption in Mississippi of accessing and withdrawing the taxpayer portion of their retirement. It was a good piece of legislation.
But the bill never made it out of committee.
We thought it was an excellent way to persecute the beneficiaries who might be innocent, and so we chose not to act on it. I mean, I think the bill would have to have a lot of work.
Couldn't there be legislation that was drafted kind of creatively to protect dependents?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. But it seems like the people who keep drafting it don't want to be creative about it. And in the committee system, in the appropriations committee, we're pretty hurried up on everything. We spend most of our time on 106 bills that deal with the budget.
I know Alaska is one of them that says, you know, you can award the forfeited pension to a spouse, a dependent, or a former spouse. So Mississippi lawmakers could do something in the same vein, right?
Yeah, we probably could do something like that.
Another concern for Frierson, taking away the money they personally contributed to their retirement.
Whether they commit a crime or not, they have money from their own pocket in there, you know, and how are we going to deal with that?
PERS is a large trust fund, mostly invested in the stock market, which means the money available for retirement fluctuates with the economy.
The state does have to pay the state share, and then on top of that we infuse cash from time to time like an emergency fashion to shore up the fund in bad economic times.
So with the state paying in most of that system, I mean, I guess wouldn't you think that would play into the ability of taking that pension away?
Yes, I would. That would give you cause to do it, but like I say, every bill I've seen drafted so far was aimed at the beneficiaries as well as to the person who might have committed the crime.
What is the penalty? There's got to be some penalty, some consequences. There ought to be some true penalty and fine in place. And this is one way that we could really put some teeth in Mississippi law.
Moving forward, Frierson said he hadn't seen any similar legislation being proposed so far this year that would revoke pensions. We reached out to Representative Greg Haney, who presented last year's bill. He told us he's made some changes and resubmitted the bill again this year. But Haney said he was told by Frierson that it will not come out of committee again. The totals are huge. We combed through more than 5 years of invoices and found the work cost taxpayers about $25 million with no solid solution to show for it.
Wastewater is one of those things that never goes away. I mean, you always have problems with wastewater.
From the stench to switching plans, Hattiesburg's wastewater problems have been costing you for almost a decade.
Spending money is a part of getting where you want to. It's that old adage, you have to spend money to make money. I mean, it's a necessary evil, if you say, but people want to know what they're getting.
That's exactly what we wanted to find out. What have Hattiesburg residents gotten from years of engineering designs, lawsuits, disagreements, sludge removal, and according to our On Your Side investigation, almost $25 million tax dollars spent? When we look at everything, it's almost $30 million over the last 6 years on attorneys, engineers, all for these plans.
Well, I think you're trying to lump everything into one. I mean, I think you got to be, I don't know where you're getting your figures from, and you may be correct, but I don't think you can lump everything that's spent on engineering or spent on wastewater or spent on, because I don't know who you talk to, I don't know where you got those figures from, but if you ask for all the figures for attorney's fees, you ask for all the figures for engineers and all the figures, I mean, I don't know what you're looking at.
Our invoices came from the city and list how much money was spent and who it was spent with.
You know then what they were used for.
Right.
Okay.
So when we add all of that up, it's like $30 million over 6 years.
Okay.
That much, really.
Part of the reason that cost is so high, the city changed treatment plans multiple times, and those changes often came with court dates and attorney's fees to get out of contracts. Why did those plans keep switching?
You know, there was some of us believe that mechanical was the best way to go. Others believe that land application was the best way to go. And so for a while, we were running down the same track.
That was politics. The council had one idea, the mayor had another idea. And for us to mutually, to achieve that goal, we had to run both paths.
Running both paths means spending money on two sets of plans to reach a single solution.
At some point when council just decided that land application was the way they wanted to go, basically, we stopped working on mechanical. And I was in agreement that we needed to stop. We needed to stop spending money going down the same track.
Those plans cost you more than $8 million, but Bradley says neither plan is being used. So you're spending money to get these plans that then never come to fruition, right?
That's correct.
The people of Hattiesburg, do you feel like they're getting what you're paying for with these plans if they aren't being implemented into a wastewater system?
We have plans on the shelf right now that we've spent money on, hoping that it'll work. And that's why we've been able to get grants.
It was a business decisions, and sometimes you make decisions with the best information that you have, and sometimes it doesn't always go your way. And this is one of the cases where it didn't. Sure, we spent a lot of money, but those plans, if we build a mechanical plan, a mechanical plant, those plans are still in place. They'll take them down, dust them off.
Certainly, I wish it were less. I mean, God knows I wish it were less, because we use that money for some other things.
He may wish it cost less, but says he doesn't think that money was wasted.
Did we waste money getting to this point? Well, you know, that's relative. I mean, that's, you know, and someone sitting around Monday morning quarterbacking can say yes, and some can say no. I mean, I'll leave it up to the people out there. All I know is that we were going up 150 to 200% on the fees, and we didn't. We didn't spend $135 million. Maybe we spent 5, maybe we spent 10. But it was a good exercise if we did all of that and we ended up to do a process that we can all be satisfied with.
No, it was not. It was not a wasted money. It was money that had to be spent. But you could sit there and make an argument. I know that you spent $5 or $6 million with an engineering firm to draw a mechanical plant, and now you're not getting anything for your money. Well, no, we have something for the money. It's when that day comes, we've already invested in the system.
We have the possibility of having a project on the shelf that is almost complete, that puts us in line for monies when and if they become available.
If you'd like to see copies of all of the invoices we used, head to WDAM.com.